Hi, Dan. Good morning, and thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you and discuss player development with you, a topic that I know we are both very passionate about. And I'm looking forward to a valuable conversation with insights for our players, parents, and coaches who are all trying to improve and get to a higher level. So, welcome and looking forward to the chat.
Thanks. Always good to be with you, Hart. Looking forward to it.
Dan, I know you will start with discussing your experience in school tennis. And over the years, you have deep experience with working with intermediate level JV players, as well as at more advanced level varsity players. And for our audience outside the US who are not familiar with these terms, essentially school level players who are at the intermediate and advanced level. But you've really spent a lot of your career working with hundreds and hundreds of players.
Yes.
And recently with your Maple Grove varsity girls team, the team has had a lot of success winning your sections, your conference, going to state, creating new school records. So I was interested to hear your thoughts on some of the key factors that you feel are attributing to the success of the Maple Grove team over the last couple of years.
Well, I think the first point is that we were fortunate enough to have good athletes. We had a lot of depth on the team. We had 16 girls that we kept on our varsity roster. I know that the Minnesota State High School League allows for 15, and we kept 16. We didn't know what to do, how we could cut that 16th person, because there wasn't much that separated probably players 12 through 16, or actually 11 through 16. The kids were dedicated, Harsh, because they spent a lot of time in the off season to get better. So we ended up with one player in particular. She was ranked 1 all year, which gave us a significant advantage. No one could beat her in the regular season, so we would start off every match 1-0, which meant at the high school level, all we had to do was split the games then. If we could win 3 and allow the other team to win 3, we were going to get a win. That's a luxury that most teams don't have. So number one, we had the talent to do well. I thought it was my responsibility to say to the girls in August when we met for the first time, our first match, we met on Monday, and our first match actually was a tournament on Saturday. So we had 5 days to figure out a lineup, to figure out who was going to be on the varsity, and then figure out who was going to play 1, 2, 3, 4 singles and 1, 2, 3 doubles. That's a quick turnaround to try to be so precise. So I said, if we don't play our best tennis in August, that's fine. We want to try and play our best tennis in October, when you get to section championships and to see who goes to state. We were close 2 years in running to beat Wayzata, and we failed by scores of 3-4 both those years to make it to state. When it came to the ratings, Wayzata was 1 when we were 4. We got the 4th seed because we lost some matches that we had some kids that were sick. Our number 1 player wasn't able to make those 2 of the matches, and that mattered. So we got the 4th seed, so we had to get to a section championship by just playing well. And we did. In the last 7 games, we were 6-1. So we almost beat the number 3 seed, Blake, losing 3-4, very close match. And then we beat Elk River, who was 5th ranked all year in the state, beat them to win the consolation championship. So it's a long answer to the question, but I think it started with talent, and then the kids worked hard in the off season.
Yeah.
So when they came to the first day of practice, they had some skills that they didn't have the previous year.
Yeah. And those are good points, Dan. I think back to my own days at the University of Minnesota, where I played college tennis. And when we'd come to start the season in September, we had about 3-4 months of summer, and I'd be training a lot in the summer, playing tournaments, getting myself ready. So when I was arriving on campus in early September, I was ready to go, very sharp with my game. And the same during the winter break. Our season, the school season, would start on typically mid-January. And so again, during the winter break, I would be training a lot. Fortunately, there were tournaments to play, and I would be preparing myself for, again, when I landed in mid-January, that I'm ready to go and then on top of my game, because there isn't much lead time. As you mentioned, the school season, as soon as the players arrive, they start with the tryouts, right? Which is a performance-based tryout. You're in a match play environment. And that then determines which team you end up, what level you're playing. And then very quickly, as you said, in the first week, within 5 days, you're into a match. And then that's the schedule for the remaining 8 to 10 weeks where you're consistently playing matches. And so there really isn't much time to sort of build up. You have to be ready to go from a performance standpoint. And I like what you said about the off season, that the work you put in leading up to the season is critical and can be the determining factor in, and as you saw in your team, the work that the girls had put in off season on their game, working on their game, that played a role in your performance. I think as I sort of think about our program, that's our goal. Is a lot of times most intermediate and advanced players that come to our program are looking to play for their varsity school team. That's their goal. And sometimes that goal is 2 to 3 years out. And so one of the things that I do in terms of developing that conversation is to start creating a plan for them that they can do on a weekly basis now. Start to create that roadmap in terms of their skills that they need to improve, the training schedule they need to follow, and start making it such that they can follow that now, and it's something they can implement, and then we lead them along the way. So I think that's one of the unique aspects of our program. And I'd like you to share a little bit more about the school season on the tryouts and the match play, and add some more on your thoughts on the preparation and having a plan before the school season starts.
I think that's really important, because once the season starts, it's hard to change their strokes. We can help them with strategy, but so many who have gone to camps and they're going to other teaching pros get directives that may not necessarily agree with what I would like them to do. But it's really difficult as their high school coach to make changes in their game. So it's essential that that work be done before the season starts on August 15th. And you're right, Harsh, we really, we had that first match on Saturday, but we start playing challenge matches on Tuesday. We gave them Monday just a kind of a chance, but we can't say to the students, you've got time, you've got to be ready to play and perform on that first day of practice in August.
Yeah.
And my design, I think you mentioned it earlier, which I really appreciate. Number one, your insights to get an individual plan for every one of your students is so important, because as I see other kids going to drilling and going to other coaches, they're falling in line with maybe the other 10 kids that are coming to those drill sessions. And there's nothing individual at all. They're following group directives. And I don't know how you do that successfully because there are so many differences in everyone's game. You can't just say this is the one way to do it and then get 10 kids to do it that way. We've got to find ways and methods and techniques that work for the individual, because it might not work for player A as it does for player B.
Right, right. And I think that the role of the coach, as I see my role, it's not just the work that I do on the court or our team does on the court with the drills, and that's very important. But it's the conversation, the expertise, the insights we're putting outside the court to create a plan for the player, helping them to prioritize the few skills they need to work on, building that on, like I said, a weekly basis that then can be progressed. And so they have not just an abstract idea of, I want to become a varsity player, but now something that can be implemented and they're working on a weekly basis.
Yes.
And I think that's an important role. And when parents and players work with us in that capacity of understanding that what we do is not just on the court in terms of building strokes and providing tips, but really creating a roadmap, a road, if you say, for the player to travel on. That becomes an important aspect. And with the boys season coming up in March, mid-March, as we go into our next session here in December, we have a clear training focus of what we're trying to accomplish in December with the improvement of stroke play and the fitness, and then that progressing into January and February with the goal of getting players ready for match play in March. And I like the point you mentioned about how challenging it can be in a school season to work on strokes. And I'd like to sort of expand a little bit more on that. But could you share a little bit more about what the practices are typically like during the school season, and what you find are the focus areas, like you mentioned, strategy and so forth?
We were lucky enough to have a volunteer coach who is very skilled to help us, so we could divide singles and doubles. So I might work with the singles kids on one day, and I wanted to have them focus on the serve and return, which are so essential in the game, to make sure that they're winning points with their first serve, not just starting it, and having a good enough second serve that really isn't an easy attack for their opponent, and then being able to return serves. I also like to focus on approach shots, because I know that's important. You don't get perhaps that many short balls in a point. So when you have an opportunity to play offense, I wanted to make sure that they have a chance to do that. And my goal, Harsh, was when we played the drills and played games, was not for them to win. That shouldn't be their focus, but their focus should be to get better and to stay in love with the game, so that they're always one step. I think it's much more important to love the game than to love the winning of the match you're playing.
Sure.
Because your work ethic is going to be much more significant, and you're going to be able to fight off the discouragement and stay positive and work hard and get more accomplished in a practice than you would if you get discouraged and feel like I need to walk away from this for a little bit.
Right.
So I think it's important for us as coaches, and I've worked with you enough so that I see it's how you function too, to be very positive with the kids and look for things they're doing right and encourage them to make some needed corrections so that they feel supported and can move to the next level with confidence.
Yeah. I like to focus on the process, the things that we can do on a weekly basis to improve. And I say, one of the things I learned from this game is whatever you receive from the game, receive it with grace.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to win and achieve titles and take that with grace. And sometimes, despite the best efforts, there are certain things that we don't receive. And And that's part of the game and life. And so I think that that attitude of focusing on putting in your best effort, enjoying the game, doing your best, learning from the game, growing from the game, and then just accepting whatever you receive from the game helps to keep a balance, because the mental aspect too comes in, and sometimes we're too tied to the result.
Yeah.
That's where the emotions come in, the frustration or the disappointment starts to come in. And so we try to keep players balanced and understanding that, that there is uncertainty. But I do believe in in that plan and having that personalized guidance, because as you said, that's important in terms of each player has certain aspects of the game that they need to work on. So you cannot approach a group and you might have a template, a general template, but that always needs to be sort of personalized. And that's where our team takes the time to meet with every parent and family and discuss and try to guide them on this.
And that's unique, because I don't think that happens in very many programs.
Right. Yeah. And to me, it's essential, right? Because we're on a journey. And so we need to understand where we are today and where we want to go to be able to move forward. Otherwise you run the risk of just going in every which way and not really knowing and not using your time and resources well as well. One thing I felt through my observations of tennis at the school level in Minnesota over the last 10 years or so, one area I feel both at the junior varsity and varsity level, when I've watched the players, is many players are, on the fundamentals, the technique side of it, whether it's stroke play, footwork, that oftentimes there are deficiencies there. It's like, there's weaknesses in the foundation of the house. Yeah. And you're trying to build the house, you're trying to build your game, but unless you address that, it's very difficult. And oftentimes players, they plateau, they reach a level beyond which it's very difficult to get to the next level. Or the performance is sort of plateauing. It's not really moving to a significantly higher level. And I feel that it's important to take time off during the year, particularly in the off season, to focus on developing your strokes, on your training. And sometimes players often feel pressure to keep playing tournaments and matches. And so you're doing a group lesson, maybe the same group lesson all year round with some changes, you're playing matches and you're on this sort of treadmill, but you're not carving out time to work on your game. And this is something we try to communicate to players and parents and try to help them to see value in taking time off and working on their game. And this is the ideal time if we look at the boys season, which is coming up in mid-March, right? November, December, January is the ideal time frame to work on that. Your thoughts on that and how important you see that being in terms of carving time out during the year and focusing on training, working on your strokes, which is then going to help when you get into the school season, when you have to play and perform.
I totally agree. I think there are many coaches, high school coaches, that get their kids playing out points all the time. And the problem with that is we're playing 2 to 3, sometimes 4 matches a week. So they're playing all the time and not working on their game. And they're just making the same mistakes over and over again because they're not taking the time to correct them. So in a good world, right? If I could have my kids every day at practice do some net work, some baseline ground stroke work, and serve and return work, so that they felt confident in each of those shots, that they could play more competitively when they needed to. Because if you don't come to the court with confidence, or you don't come with the knowledge of how to make some corrections and adjustments, tennis can destroy you. It's such a difficult game to play if you're not prepared to be there.
Yeah.
So I so agree with what you're saying, Harsh. I think it's this time now. I said to the girls at the tennis banquet, your season does not, next year's season doesn't start in June or August. It starts now in October, when you have November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. You have 9 months to prepare for August. Don't wait until June, which can be a busy time with vacations and a lot of pressure to do things with friends. It might be too late. Now is the time to get busy and to continue this drive to get better, to get better. That should be your main focus. I mean, I think that should be their main focus.
And you made a good point on working on your game and taking the time to, and that requires time.
Yes.
And there's this idea out there in tennis a lot where, you know, if you play matches and tournaments, you're going to improve. And that's fine. You know, I agree with that to some extent. You can learn and improve from matches, no doubt. It's part of your maturity, your mindset, your game, your strategy can improve through match play. But when you're talking about stroke development, technique development, fitness development, that has to come from training. And you need to schedule, the best players in the world, they schedule time for that. They give themselves a block of time because they know, you know, if you're, for example, changing a stroke or learning a new stroke and you have a match in 3 days, it's very difficult to implement that in a match. In a match setting, you're going to default back to what's comfortable, what's automatic, because you know, you're trying to compete. And that's what a lot of players I see fall into. They feel pressure to keep playing match after match after match, and they're not giving themselves that time to train. And so the performance, as you said, in a match can only get to a certain level unless you fix the deficiencies you have. And and in our program, we're trying to instill this point of, you know, November, December, for example, is a great time to be working on your game. Focus and prioritize working with the coaches, improving your strokes, following the plan, build your fitness, and there will be time for you to perform, right? In fact, for the boys in mid-March, for the girls in August, right? And then you can play tournaments at other times of the year. There'll be plenty of opportunities to play tournaments, but preparation is key. And preparation happens in training. Preparation does not happen in tournament play. And this is, I'm glad you mentioned the point, and I'm excited for more and more players in Minnesota following this, because I think it can really help raise their level and get them more prepared for when they do come to the school season and they're in a tryout situation, they're in a match situation, they have the tools to be able to play at a higher level. And as I mentioned, most of them want to get to the varsity level. And we've got to help the players and families understand how to prepare for it and how to bring your performance to a whole nother level. It's not just about, right, incrementally. Maybe you can share one more point, Dan, on the difference in level between junior varsity and varsity. And I know different schools have different levels, but, you know, trying to sort of showcase that level that they need to improve. And a lot goes into that, right?
It does. A big part of it is might be age and size and physical development. Although there are some younger kids who are very talented, and some of it depends on how much experience they bring with them to the courts. Kids now are starting to play at a much younger age, and that makes a difference. What I look for is how do they compete? Do they love to play? Are they coachable? Do they get along well with other players so that they're not creating drama and difficulty? The final kind of selection process for me is their serve. Can they serve? Because we know how important it is. If you can hold serve and break one serve, you're going to win the set. So that's how important the serve is. And I always challenge my kids to try to serve 100 serves a day in the summer. I know they don't have as much access to a court in the winter, but they do in the summer and the spring. So to practice that serve. So those are the qualities that I kind of look for in a player, because I want to make sure I can connect, that my personality and their personality are tight, and I can be a useful tool to help them improve their game, and to look forward to coming to practice every single day, to be that Michael Jordan type where you're the first one on the court and the last one off the court. Those kinds of qualities, some of which can't be taught, that just kids want. They just love the game, and they can't walk away from the court. Those are fun kids to work with.
Sure. Yeah, they have high potential because they have a love for the game and they're willing to put in the work.
Yes.
And you mentioned a point on coachability and working with a coach, developing a relationship with them, and that also, I think, is a topic on its own. But away from the school season or generally in one's tennis, how do you develop a relationship with the coach, work with someone, put your trust in someone? And that helps. It's valuable for the coach as well, because they feel that the player is connected to them and you can work together as a team, right?
Yes.
Versus sometimes, a lot of time players are sort of working with a number of individuals. The parents also may be coaching. And so there's so many individuals that are all coaching, and they don't really have that coaching relationship with anyone. So that could be a wonderful future conversation that can help players in their journey. But thank you so much for your time, Dan.
You're welcome.
Excellent points on the high school season, the demands of the season, the value of preparing well, and how to work with the coach in developing your game, but also working with them to create a roadmap for your tennis, helping them to help you prepare well and guide you to reach a whole nother level of performance.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I look forward to working with you in our program and to more discussions on player development.
Me too. It's an honor to work with you, Harsh.
Likewise. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you,
Bye.
Harsh. Bye.